So recently, Wayne Rooney has been discussing his time in football management, about how he chooses sides that will give him a challenge, how he has a desire to stay in football in any form possible, and he spoke very openly and honestly about his time at Birmingham City, which, let's face it, went about as well as a blind man in a skeet shooting competition. However, despite the fact that Wazza's time at Birmingham was a nightmare and not the kitchen kind, it still wasn't the worst managerial stint we've seen in England, and that got me thinking about just what were the worst managerial spells in England's top division, because oh boy, there have been some absolute stingers which wouldn't stand out in a festival porta potty. Welcome to Good Sport Reviews, my name is Lewis and here are the top 10 worst managerial reigns in the Premier League era. Number 10, Roy Hodgson Liverpool, July 2010 till January 2011. It's a personal one, okay? There's no way in hell I was going to be doing this list without including the man who made me hate football and life itself. Nothing against Roy Hodgson, I'm sure as a person he's lovely, he seems like the type of bloke you'd want to go for a pint with, but as Liverpool manager he had about as much tactical awareness as Goose from Top Gun after their plane got shot down. He led Liverpool following the departure of Rafa Benitez during a horrendous time for the club, with everything from ownership to players to the atmosphere at the ground being as low as possible. And by the time Hodgson was sacked on the 8th of January that year, we'd lost 9 league games and were locked out of the League Cup by Northampton. Northampton! From awful defensive setups to transfers which made absolutely no sense. I mean, selling Mascherano and Benayoun and bringing in Paul Konchesky and Christian Poulsen, no thank you. The stint was awful and Hodgson was let go after 5 months in charge. Alright, I've got that out. So now, on to number 9, Alan Pardew, West Bromwich Albion, November 2017 till April 2018. I'm not quite sure how Alan Pardew continues to get jobs in football, given the fact that he couldn't coordinate his way into a pack of Watsits that were already open. This was especially clear back in 2017 when West Brom, with about as much ambition as an X-Factor contestant, decided to appoint the former Crystal Palace man as their manager. Exciting? No. Successful? No. The spell lasted 21 games and had it end with just a 14% win percentage, leaving the sides 10 points from safety with only 6 games to go, by relying on outballs to the channels for results and a clear inability to keep the mood in the squad high. He had a public disagreement with Grish. He was on loan from PSG and fined over £100,000, and he signed a Daniel Sturridge on loan from Liverpool, who at this point was more machine now than man after his injuries, and plunged the club into relegation before parting ways with the Albion in April of 2018. Number 8, Paulo Di Canio, Sunderland, March 2013 till September 2013. I think the message for this is begin as you mean to go on. That seemed to be the message anyway with Sunderland, with the appointment of Paulo Di Canio, prompting the resignation of club vice president David Miliband due to political issues, and this resulted in sponsorship deals pulling out of agreements with the Black Cats, top business sense from the Sunderland board right there. Putting all that to one side, the main focus is the football, and oh, it isn't pretty. Yes, his first win was a 3-0 win over Newcastle away from home for the first time in over a decade, and yes, he kept the side in the Premier League in 17th place, but behind the scenes the club was a mess, and Paulo Di Canio actually had players approaching the board behind his back because of his, quote, brutal and vitriolic criticism of the players. Always a good sign when the lads are getting HR involved, I suppose, and he was sacked after only his 13th game in charge of the club. Yes, he wasn't helped with the departures of Simon Mignolet, James McLean and Stefan Sessegnon, but when a manager is able to destabilise a club to that degree, it deserves a spot on the list. Number 7, Paul Heckingbottom, Sheffield United, August 2023 to December 2023. It's a recent entry on this list, and one that definitely isn't spoken about enough. During his entire stint as Sheffield United manager, Paul Heckingbottom did a good job gaining promotion with the Blades to the Premier League during the 2022-2023 season. However, his spell in the top flight itself was about as effective as a wet paper bag with shopping inside it. The side haven't got higher than 16th place at the time of this recording, and are on course to concede the most goals in Premier League history, and apparently could end with over 100 conceded. And yes, I know that's just not his fault. Chris Wilder deserves criticism too, but Paul Heckingbottom led his sides to defeats such as a 3-1 defeat to Fulham, a 5-0 defeat to Arsenal, and a 5-0 defeat to relegation rivals Burnley, as well as a thumping 8-0 defeat to Newcastle. They had more shots thrown at them than a World War I soldier, and the man still kept his job until December somehow. Sheffield were always doomed for the drop this season, but this man's defence first, defence second, attack 20th approach has left the club with no fight whatsoever. Number 6, Graham Potter, Chelsea, September 2022 till April 2023. Might be a bit of a controversial one given that Graham Potter's life at Blues Clues started off fairly well, with the club going unbeaten in his first 5 games. He beat Manchester United, which nowadays is the equivalent of celebrating when you hit a piñata at a party. But after that, oh boy, the club won 2 of their next 8, lost matches to Fulham, Newcastle, Brighton and Southampton, and proceeded to systematically target the relegation zone. Now, look, I know that at the time, currently, Chelsea is a basket case of a club. The entire squad, backroom staff and board have been gutted like a sheep in a butcher's, but the man spent over £300 million to sign players for his side. He signed Mudryk for close to £100 million. He signed Enzo Fernandez for over £100 million. And while this may be down to Chelsea's board knowing about as much as football as I know about quantum mechanics, it still can't be used as an excuse. Graham Potter was brought in to implement a long-term vision for the club and was so bad that the owners couldn't even let him do that. He left with a 39% win percentage, and that's the lowest since Glenn Hoddle in 1996, and he managed to sign for 3 years. It's not even a fair comparison. Number 5, Mick McCarthy, Sunderland, August 2005 till February 2006. We've spoken about this Sunderland side before, and in a list titled The Top 10 Worst Anything, odds are Mick McCarthy is going to be in it. Worst relegated sides, worst managerial stints, worst hairline, worst look someone can receive in a dark alley. Anyway, despite all that, there's no denying that Mick McCarthy's time at Sunderland during their Premier League stint was beyond awful. The Black Cats had lost 19 league games before someone took Mick out the back and put him out of his misery. The side were conceding goals for fun and at one point conceded 16 in 5 games and going on a 9-game losing streak, only to be broken up by a 0-0 draw against Bolton, the height of success there for Mick McCarthy. And he couldn't muster any kind of serious attempt at staying in the Premier League. Yes, they'd only been promoted, and yes, it's hard for promoted teams to stay in the top division, but this was a side who had just won the championship. They were still being led by a man who couldn't arrange a deck of cards. He was sacked in February of 2006 after a 1-1 draw against Tottenham, and his nightmare spell in the green part of Tyneside was over. Number 4, Jan Stewart, Huddersfield, January 2019 till August 2019. Might be a bit harsh putting Jan Stewart, I assume that's his name, I'm struggling to pronounce it, on this list. And it may be doubly harsh putting him number 4 given the fact that Huddersfield had about as much chance staying up as a drunk pensioner's penis, but take sentiment to one side and put one between its eyes, as this spell at Huddersfield was a nightmare for the former Dortmund 2 manager, with his side only picking up 1 win during his 15 games in total and only ending his spell at the club with 5 points, which is coincidentally 1 more point than his position in this list. The side played dross football, and as mentioned in the past, the Terriers should have gone down the season before, and the fact they hadn't was a miracle. But this managerial spell was a disaster, compounded by an 8-game losing streak, only 10 goals scored in 15 games, and defeats to West Ham, Watford and Bournemouth, condemning the side to relegation. Safe to say Jan Stewart wasn't given an extension to his contract, and he was sacked in August of that year. Number 3, Remi Garde, Aston Villa, November 2015 till March 2016. There's a pattern on this list. Club sacks manager, club signs new manager has about as much managerial ability as a slab of cheese, new manager is sacked before the season is over. That's the perfect way to sum up Remi Garde's time at Aston Villa during the 2015-16 season, as he took over from Tim Sherwood and destroyed any hopes the club had of staying in the Premier League. 2 wins in 20 matches, 2 wins in 20. Let's just repeat that for everyone who couldn't hear it in the back. What a hero. He dropped Jack Grealish for, air quotes, partying too much. If only there was a manager who could get a grip at that, who knows what he could go on to win. And his side played some of the most awful football the Premier League has ever seen, with the peak point of the season being when they went on a 3-game unbeaten run, which consisted of a 1-0 victory over Crystal Palace, a 1-1 draw against eventual league winners Leicester, and a 0-0 draw against West Bromwich Albion, the peak of managerial excellence right there. He rooted the team to the bottom of the league table, with them only picking up 17 points all season, and was out the door as soon as survival became impossible. Birmingham City fans, thank you, Remi. Number 2, Bob Bradley, Swansea City, October 2016 till December 2016. We're in the top 2 now, and are they number 2? Swansea was still searching for the heir apparent to former manager Gary Monk, the man who was sacked far too soon, might I add, and their eyes were drawn to America, with Bob Bradley coming in to take over from the former Swansea captain. He came in and did what all good Americans do, destroy the rule book and say they're doing it my way, and it didn't work The side picked up 2 wins but lost 7 games, conceding 29 goals. They conceded 4 against Crystal Palace, 5 against Tottenham and 4 against West Ham. Yes, they scored plenty, but take it from someone who watched the side play under Brendan Rodgers, the doesn't matter how many you score, we're going to score more approach, it doesn't work. He couldn't find any sort of stability in the squad and was sacked in December of the same year after only 85 days in the job. It goes down as number 2 because of how much unrest it caused in the side. Under Gary Monk, there was at least a sort of feeling of safety, and yes, they were looking a bit worse for wear and weren't exactly perfect under him at the beginning of the season, but they lost players like Andre Ayew and Ashley Williams in the summer, who were important to how their squad functioned, and Bob Bradley's shoot a goal first, ask questions later approach made things much more difficult for the club. And number 1, Frank de Boer, Crystal Palace, June 2017 till September 2017. There was never a doubt about who was going to top this list, let's be honest. The man who lasted 4 games as manager and lost all 4 games. The man who, during his only 4 games in Premier League management, didn't score a single goal. And it's the man who tried to have his side play a possession-based style of football, and when that didn't work, he blamed the players. The man is Frank de Boer. Not really sure what to say about this, to be honest. It was ambitious, yes, bringing in a man who'd led Ajax to multiple league titles and who was briefly in charge of Inter Milan, but this really was an awful outcome that no one expected. This side lost to Huddersfield, Liverpool, Swansea and Burnley with not a single goal scored for a side in any of them, and it's not like it was a bad squad. They had the likes of Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Johan Cabaye, Mamadou Sakho, Christian Benteke, Wilfried Zaha in the ranks to get his side playing the right way, and when Jose Mourinho himself's coming out and said it's the worst managerial spell in Premier League history, it's hard to argue with it. At least all the other managers in the list picked up wins, and look, I could understand if I went back and the first 4 games were against top level opposition, I could get that. But Huddersfield had just been promoted, Swansea ended up relegated that season, so there isn't much excuse with them. And if you go back and watch the goals the side conceded, they're ridiculous. With the back 4 more scattered than a blown up watermelon, this is without a doubt the worst time the manager has ever had in the Premier League, and it's going to take some beating for anyone else to get that title. But hey, there's still time. Ten Hag, take your time. And that's our list. If you are new around here, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. Really appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next